So, taking a look at Bradford City now, delighted to say joining us once again is Simon Parker from the Telegraph and Argos. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Hi, fellas. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad. So, Bradford City, since the last time we had you on, which was a couple of weeks or so ago now, it's not been a particularly good run of late. Three defeats across two separate competitions. Defeat at Northampton, at Salford in the Papa John's Trophy. Not that that really matters. And, of course, Leyton Orient on Saturday. What's your take on recent results?
Yeah, it's a frustrating one. I mean, the Salford one matters financially, really, because that was an opportunity it was 20 grand for winning that night, and obviously potential to get some good money building on in that tournament, throw it into the January pot sort of thing. So they missed out on that one. But I mean, as you say, the two league games, very frustrating because obviously they're both teams above them. I mean, the Northampton was the big one, wasn't it, initially, because if you'd beaten them, they'd have gone into the top three for the first time this season. And for the first 25 minutes, half an hour, they were the better team, Then they went behind. Northampton then got a second very quickly, and it was effectively game over. You fast forward to last Saturday at Leyton Orient. First 25 minutes, they were all over Orient. A lot of good opportunities that they never really pounced on. They were hassling them, they were hurrying them, they were pressing them into mistakes, but they didn't really create anything to really worry them. And there's nothing on target to sort of threaten them at the time. And then what happens? Orient score, virtually from their first attack, then score a great second goal a couple of minutes later, and it sort of felt a bit like deja vu. So at the moment, the problem seems to be, the fast starts, because obviously there was an issue before about they were sort of starting games a bit slowly. I mean, they're starting games well, but they're not really putting their foot down when they're on top, sort of making it count, and that's coming back to bite them.
Yeah, is there any reasoning behind this at the moment? Is it just a simple case of, whilst they're starting faster, it's just not going for them, it's not taking the chances?
Well, I mean, we keep going back to Andy Cook's phenomenal record this season, and there's always that big question mark that if Cook doesn't score, who does? And it's a question that we still really haven't answered. There have been instances, we've seen Scott Banks scored a few, Tyreek Wright, and you sort of thought, oh yeah, others are going to chip in. But it's not really happened. So if Cook doesn't score, and he missed a couple of decent chances on Saturday at Orient, if he doesn't score, then you're worried where the load's going to be picked up by somebody else, and that's what's really lacking. Because when you look at the goals, the tally, obviously he's on 16, and then it's right down there till I think it's Jake Young, but most of those goals were in the cup. So there's no one sort of really picking up the slack if the top scorer is not on the score sheet.
Yeah, obviously, I'd say that's certainly an issue that needs resolving, because obviously we talked in the past about Dane Oliver and the fact that he's just been having to live life off the bench and picking up minutes here and there, but not really getting much of an opportunity. And it's, I suppose, because of the form Andy Cook has been in, it's not really allowing everybody else to come in to league games in particular from the start to try and find some minutes and some form themselves.
No, and the age-old problem with Bradford City is goals from midfield, which is something that we banged on about for far too long. And again, that's still, as I said, the two wingers have chipped in, but it's still an issue. Harry Chapman, for the amount of times he gets in good positions, he should be banging them away. And that's why you hope that obviously Jamie Walker's now sort of back in the mix again. And I mean, he could potentially be a very big player for them. You saw the way he finished last season. I think he scored in the last 3 home games, and he was banging form then. And if they can get him up and firing to that sort of level, then hopefully that will be the midfield. The midfield goal input that currently they're lacking. But, it's obviously going to be a lot of expectation on him.
In terms of the league table, obviously those defeats against the sides that were above City have just kind of helped them to pull away really from the Bantams, but still very much in that tight-knit bunch of sides in and around the playoff places. Bradford's currently sitting 6th on 33 points, but there's a point between 4th and 7th and only a couple of points down as far as, 10th?
Yeah, I think the frustrating thing is I think it's 6th to 3rd place. As we said, if they'd beaten Northampton, they'd have been in 3rd place. But if you turn it the other way, it's 6th to 14th. I think Tranmere are in 14th on 27 points. So, they've lost. I think the most frustrating thing of obviously not breaking into that automatics for the first time, which ultimately would have been a feather in the cap. Although we're looking further down the line when it really matters, but. I think what's the most frustrating thing about those two defeats is seeing that little cushion they had into the playoff positions suddenly evaporate. Now they're in a situation where you lose a game. I mean, by the time they play on Sunday, obviously you're playing behind everyone else. It's very likely they're not in a playoff spot. And I know it's 20 games in, but it's that little gap that they built up behind them, which has now disappeared. And there's a clump of clubs who sort of come rattling up, the likes of Walsall and that who've had a good run. And I think that's the most frustrating thing with these back-to-back losses.
There's been some talk about frustration with Mark Hughes' style, or what the style he's trying to implement on the team, and he's sticking to it, and he's not particularly changing it up. But what do you get as a sense from Hughes himself? How concerned is he with this run of recent form?
I don't think it's sort of putting him off his objective and his belief that they can achieve that objective. As we say, the style of play he very much wants to play. He said he's always played it with the teams he's had in Premier League level, and he's going to play it at this level because that's what he wants from his players. And which in a way it's a bit of a compliment to the side to sort of say, look, I want you to play a Premier League football style, but obviously doing it at League Two, as you can see, doesn't always fit in so smoothly. But I mean, he's not going to. I can't suddenly see him jettisoning it, turning up 4-4-2 next week and banging it long. I mean, they will go direct at times if they're chasing a game, but as he said, they'll mix it up in games. But they'll very much start with that sort of style where he wants to play, playing out from the back, using that passing way, and just working it through the lines. And I don't think that's going to change. And he talks to it at the moment. I mean, after the Orient game, he was quite sort of relaxed about it, I thought. In the sort of immediate aftermath, he's obviously said it's a blip, but I don't think he sees it as anything more than that. And he was sort of saying he didn't see a lot of difference between the two teams, but I think the big difference was that Orient were very clinical and City were anything but. That was the big difference. But in terms of probably on the ball, certainly for the first half, there was nothing between them.
How much are they missing Critchlow at the minute?
Quite a lot. That's yeah.
To say the
I
least.
think. Yeah, I mean, he's missed 2 league games. They've conceded 6 goals, and I'm not saying that's all down to his replacements, but that rhythm. Obviously, his partnership with Matty Platt has been a very consistent sort of. It's been a real sort of backbone of part of this team up to now. And the team that's done very well. It's had that sort of solid spine, and those two they complement each other well because they're very different sort of styles, but it gels nicely, and they've obviously understand how each other plays. And then you've got others coming in now. Timmy Odesina, who still, for me, hasn't really cut it yet as a City player. We saw him at Hartlepool and he looked very good in a team that was struggling. And you sort of thought, yeah, he's a good acquisition. But, I'm sure he will come good because he's a good player. But at the moment, it doesn't seem to be happening for him in a City shirt. He's not really looked the Timmy Odesina of last season. And Jan Songo, of course, sort of slips in there. But he's a very similar sort of style of centre half to Matty Platt, without probably the natural sort of feel for it. Bearing in mind that he's more midfield player than a centre half. So when you've got the two of those together, it can look a little bit sort of ungainly. And I think, yeah, Critchlow sort of he oils the wheels nicely at the back, and without him there, it just seems to be a little bit cranky down the middle at the moment, and that's been exploited.
Where are we at with Critchlow in terms of the potential for a return?
Well, Mark Hughes said yesterday that he's got a chance the weekend. I think he's back training he said he's on the grass, so I'm not sure he's full training. I'll be surprised if he's risked this weekend, bearing in mind it's a long journey as well. And they've got a home game next time, and then obviously going into the Christmas spell. So it might well be just make sure we get him right. But then the other thought is that, while the manager obviously won't publicly say that the defence has looked a bit rickety without him, there's that feeling that without him, they have looked quite vulnerable, which they haven't done previous matches. So, but my gut feeling is that he won't be involved this weekend.
Yeah, to be fair, if there was a fixture to play where you might have a slightly shaky defence, Gillingham away seems like a reasonable fixture to have, bearing in mind that they've scored 6 league goals all season. 6 goals in 20 games for Gillingham fans. And, obviously struggling at the wrong end of the table.
Yeah, but we've seen these stats before. I mean, City fans of sort of longer years will point out hundreds of these sort of cases of clubs who couldn't hit a barn door, couldn't win for toffee, and suddenly they get the result against the Bantams. So I think there was Harrogate earlier this season. They'd gone half a dozen games at home without scoring, and then of course they score against City. I mean, City did win that game, but again, it was, it was far tougher game than I think people would have thought given the previous form. So I don't think they'll be under any illusions that this one's going to be a challenge. You've got the long trip as well, haven't you? And also with Gillingham playing in the FA Cup, there's also the question of how good the pitch will be a couple of days later, given the sort of cold weather at the moment. So I think could be quite an ugly game. I mean, because if you look at Gillingham's record, they don't tend to concede many. I know they conceded 3 against Salford, but that sort of flattered them later on. I think that generally their defence is pretty good. So the Gillingham games, they just lose tight games because they can't score goals. So I don't think it's going to be an away romp, put it that way.
Yeah, a couple of big games against sides that are towards the bottom of League Two in these coming weeks. As you say, Gillingham on Sunday and then Rochdale the week after. It's fair to say the Bantams have quite a stay at the bottom end of the table as well as their own exploits at the top.
Yeah, and they've also got Harrogate straight after Christmas as well. So got 3 of the bottom 5 in the next 4 games. So, I think from looking at it, objectively, from a team that want to be in a position that they want to be, you've got to be looking at maximum points from those 3 games. They've got Carlisle away on Boxing Day, who currently edged above them on goal difference. So, if you could ideally get 3 wins of those teams and a draw at Carlisle, 10 points from that spread will be a very fine way to finish the year. Put everyone in good spirits going into 2023 in a strong position. Obviously, it's not as simple as that, but certainly, if you've got top 7 aspirations, you'll be looking at these games and thinking you need a good spread of points from it.
What's your plan for the weekend in terms of Gillingham away? Then are you going down Saturday to the England game, and whilst you're down there, or is it an early start on Sunday morning?
No, I'm going down on the Saturday because obviously it is because it's been an early kickoff on the Sunday anyway. So I'll be watching England possibly on a very small hotel TV screen. so I'm just hoping the traffic's kind Saturday afternoon, so I don't sort of turn up 20 minutes into the first half.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I remember going down to Gillingham and myself earlier this season with Rochdale, and that was, the traffic was less than kind on a Friday evening, put it that way.
Yeah.
I think it was about.
I think Saturday afternoon tends to be better. Friday's hideous, isn't it, at times? So
yeah, just the nightmare that is the M25, eh?
What's the game? What's the 3 o'clock Saturday game then? What's the first quarterfinal that day?
I can't remember, to be honest, top of my head, but I'll be listening to that somewhere on the M1.
Before we let you go, Sam, I suppose we should probably ask really about England and the bigger picture at the moment with the World Cup and the fact that we have got this rather important quarterfinal on Saturday night. I mean, how do you assess from a journalist's perspective how England have done at this World Cup, and what are your thoughts ahead of Saturday?
Well, I've been impressed with England. I think they've done everything. It's gone so smoothly in terms of the results. I mean, it was obviously the draw against USA was a bit stodgy, but on the bigger picture, USA were a decent side, and that wasn't the worst result. Getting 7 points out the group, as it turned out, was the biggest haul of any team in the group stage, wasn't it? And then to go through as comfortably as they did in the second round, which could have been potentially a sticky game. It's gone very, very smoothly for them, and great attacking options. And I think the fact that you can use 5 subs this season or this World Cup, that plays into their hands because they've got so many good options to come off the bench. The fact that we can't pick an England team whereas normally almost writes itself, doesn't it? The fact that you're sort of wondering who's going to play, particularly in those attacking positions.
Even with Sterling going, it's not even that big. I'm like, oh yeah, no. Sterling's not even in the squad, and you're like, oh, it's fine. We've got Grealish and Saka
exactly. Also, Rashford scores twice, and then he doesn't start the next game. And normally there'd be a sort of a national hoo-ha about that, wouldn't there? But as it was, you almost didn't notice, did you? Because it was just very smoothly done. And there's good players in good form at the moment and full of confidence. And the good thing is, if they can break through this barrier, get to the final, obviously they'd have to probably do it the hard way. It's potentially France, Argentina, Brazil to win it, I think. if it all goes to form, but unless it's Morocco, of course, waiting for you. But I mean, if they did do it, the thing is, because the age of this team, most of this team could still be there 4 years' time. It's potentially, again, it's potentially, it's on the brink of something very special. And I certainly haven't seen anything that should worry them in terms of thinking, oof, they're better than us, because I don't think any of them are.
I think Bellingham might have about another 4 World Cups after in him.
Exactly. Yeah, he's frightening, isn't he, for 19 or whatever.
Absolutely phenomenal. Just before we let you go, your 3 o'clock glisten on the way down on Saturday is the Morocco game, Morocco versus Portugal.
Ah.
Well, I might switch it on about 5 o'clock when it gets to penalties then. Because I can't see too many goals in that one, to be honest. I don't think it's going to be another 6-1 job, is it?
Honestly, I don't fancy anyone against Morocco on penalties. Their keepers.
No, they've done well, haven't they?
Unbelievable.
Keeper was superb, and the absolute nonchalance of Hakimi's winning penalty, just to Panenka.
Exactly. Bit of a Panenka at the end, yeah, fantastic.
And then a penguin dance. Lovely.
Excellent. Well, we wish you a safe trip down, mate, to Gillingham on Saturday. Anyway, all the best for the weekend, and here's hoping that the Bantams can come back with all 3 points. Thanks for joining us, mate.
They better do. Cheers. See you later.
Thanks,
Take care, mate. Thank you.